On a family vacation. My daughter-in-law locked me in a hotel bathroom and told my son I had already gone home. She thought I'd never come back, but never imagined someone was recording. Hello, dear listeners. Before I begin my story, I would be very happy if you subscribe and hit the like button. Please write in the comments which city or country you are listening from. Now enjoy the story. My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 71 years old, and I have learned that life rarely warns you before it changes direction. Most of the time, it happens quietly, softly, like a door closing behind you when you think you are still safe. The sound I remember first is not my own voice. It is the click, a small, dry click, the kind of sound you don't notice until it is too late. The bathroom door closed behind me, and Lena Brooks stood on the other side for just a second longer than necessary. She smiled at me through the mirror. "Take your time, Evelyn," she said gently. "We'll wait." Her tone was polite, respectful, almost caring. That should have been my first warning. But when you are a mother, and later a grandmother, you learn to trust small kindnesses. You learn not to read danger into every smile. If you do, you won't survive long emotionally. So I nodded. "I won't be long," I said. I did not hear her answer. I washed my hands slowly. The water was warm. The hotel soap smelled like lemons and something artificial. I looked at myself in the mirror, the lines around my eyes, the gray in my hair that I stopped hiding years ago. "This vacation will be good," I whispered to my reflection. "Michael wants this." Michael Carter, my only son, had insisted. He said it would help us reconnect. He said work had kept him distant, and this trip would give us time. I wanted to believe him. I reached for the towel, dried my hands, took a breath. Then I turned the handle. It didn't move. I turned it again, slower this time. Nothing. At first, I smiled to myself. Hotel doors stick all the time. Old buildings dressed up with new paint. A fancy place hiding cheap fixes. "Lena?" I called lightly. The doors stuck. No answer. I knocked once. Polite, controlled. "Michael?" I added. Still nothing. That was when I checked my pocket. Empty. My phone was not there. I remembered leaving it on the bed, plugged into the charger beside my purse. The room key was next to it. A small wave of unease rolled through me, but I pushed it down. "You're fine, Evelyn," I told myself. "Someone will hear you." I knocked again, louder. Minutes passed. Real minutes. The kind that feel longer than they are. I listened. No footsteps. No hallway noise. No voices. Just the steady hum of the bathroom fan and my own breathing. I leaned my forehead against the door. The wood felt cool. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's not panic." I knocked harder. That's when I heard voices outside. My heart lifted. Lena's voice came first, calm, low, controlled. Then Michael's. Relief rushed through me so fast it almost hurt. "Michael," I called out. "I'm in here." I banged on the door. My voice echoed in the small bathroom, but something was wrong. Michael didn't answer. Instead, I heard Lena speak. "She already went home," Lena said casually. "She wasn't feeling well." The words didn't register at first. I pressed my ear against the door. "She said not to make a big deal about it," Lena continued. "I helped her pack." My heart dropped. I knocked again, harder than before. "Michael," I shouted. "I'm here." My throat burned. Silence. Then Michael's voice came back, uncertain. "She didn't tell me anything." Lena didn't pause. "She didn't want to worry you." There was no hesitation in her voice. No confusion. No doubt. That was the moment my fear became something else. Understanding? This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a mistake. Lena had decided where I was, and more importantly, where I wasn't. I banged on the door until my hands hurt. But the sound felt weak now, trapped behind wood and intention. I slid down the door slowly and sat on the cold tile floor. My legs felt unsteady. I pressed my palms to my knees and forced myself to breathe. "In through the nose," I whispered. "Out through the mouth." I had survived worse moments than this in my life. I had buried my husband. I had raised a child alone for years. I had learned patience the hard way. This was not the end. but it was the beginning of something dangerous. I listened carefully. Michael asked where the bags were. Lena answered easily. Too easily. She took the early shuttle, she said. She said she'd call you later. That part almost broke me, because I was trying to call him. If I had my phone, if I wasn't locked in, if my voice mattered more than Lena's calm certainty. Tears filled my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Crying wastes energy, and I was going to need every bit of strength I had. I stood up slowly and looked around the bathroom. No windows. No vents large enough to shout through. Just a solid door and a lock that had done its job too well. I knocked again, this time not loud but steady. A rhythm. Knock. Pause. Knock. If Michael was still there, maybe he would notice. I pressed my ear to the door again. Footsteps moved away. Their voices faded. They were leaving the room. Panic rose, sharp and fast. No, I whispered. Please don't leave. I knocked harder. But the hallway swallowed my sound. And then there was silence, the kind that settles heavy in your chest. I checked the lock again. Still firm. I sat back down, leaned against the door, and closed my eyes. I thought of Michael as a boy, how he used to run into my room after bad dreams, how he trusted me without question. And now, because of one calm voice, he had left me behind. That realization hurt more than the lock. Minutes turned into something longer. I don't know how long I sat there. Time behaves differently when you're trapped. Your thoughts slow down. Then they race. I noticed small things. The faint scratch on the door handle, like someone had tested it before. The way Lena had rushed me into the bathroom earlier. The way she had insisted on carrying my purse for me. I opened my eyes. The pieces were lining up. This was planned. And if it was planned, then it could be undone. I stood up again. I knocked, not in panic, but with purpose. If I couldn't be louder, I would be smarter. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. Nothing. That didn't mean no one would come back. It meant I had time. And standing there, locked inside a hotel bathroom, abandoned by the person I raised, I made myself a promise. Evelyn Carter would not disappear quietly. Not today. Not ever. I stayed still for a long time after the hallway went quiet. Stillness is something you learn with age. When you are young, you move first and think later. When you are older, you learn that rushing often makes things worse. I pressed my back against the bathroom door and listened. Not with my ears alone, but with my whole body. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. No elevator bell. Just the low hum of air moving through. The vents and the faint echo of water pipes. Inside the walls. That silence told me something important. They were gone. Michael and Lena had left the room. I slid down slowly until I was sitting on the floor again. The tile felt colder now. Or maybe my body had finally noticed it. I rested my hands in my lap and forced myself to breathe evenly. In through the nose, I whispered. Out through the mouth. Panic comes in waves. If you let the first one drown you, the rest follow quickly. I had lived long enough to know that fear feeds on attention. So I did something else. I started observing. The bathroom was small but clean. White tiles. A metal trash can. A folded towel rack near the sink. The mirror above the counter had a tiny crack in the corner, probably from some careless suitcase years ago. I stood up and tested the door again. Locked. Not jammed. Locked. There is a difference. A jammed door fights you. A locked door stays calm. This one stayed calm. That detail sat heavy in my chest. I leaned close to the lock and examined it. The handle wasn't broken. The latch wasn't loose. Someone had turned it from the outside. Slowly, memories from earlier that morning began to return. Sharper now, clearer. Lena standing near the door while I gathered my things. Lena offering to carry my purse. Lena insisting, I leave my phone charging because you won't need it in the bathroom. At the time, it sounded considerate. Now it sounded rehearsed. I pressed my forehead to the cool mirror and closed my eyes. This was not an accident. And that meant something else, too. If Lena had planned this, then she had expected time. Enough time for Michael to leave without looking back. That thought hurt more than the lock. I walked to the sink and turned on the water. The sound filled the small space. I splashed some on my face and looked at myself again. My eyes were red but focused. "You're still here, Evelyn," I said softly. "You're still thinking." I turned the water off and listened again. Still nothing. Time moved strangely. I counted my breaths. Then I stopped counting. I don't know how long passed, maybe minutes, maybe longer. Then I heard something faint. Footsteps. Not close. Somewhere down the hallway. My heart jumped. I knocked quickly, then stopped myself. No, not yet. People pass hotel rooms all the time. Housekeeping carts, guests, staff. If I made noise at the wrong moment, it could easily be ignored. I waited. The footsteps faded. I leaned back against the wall, my mind racing now. Why would Lena do this? That question came uninvited, and once it arrived, it refused to leave. I thought back to the past year. The way Lena's smile tightened whenever Michael and I talked alone. The way she corrected me in front of others, always politely. Always with that soft tone that made it seem harmless. The way she handled all the travel plans herself and never once asked. What I preferred, small things. Too small to accuse, too consistent to ignore. I had told myself it was stress. Work pressure. Marriage adjustments. Now, locked in this bathroom, those explanations felt thin. I sat down again and leaned my head against the door. "Michael," I whispered, not loud enough for anyone else to hear. Just enough to say his name. I raised that boy to question things. To notice when something didn't make sense. Would he question this? Or would Lena's calm certainty carry more weight than my absence? The thought made my throat tighten. I pressed my hand flat against the door, as if touch alone could carry my presence through the wood. "I'm still here," I whispered. A sudden sharp sound made me jump. A knock. Not on the bathroom door, on the room door. Someone was at the room. My heart raced. I stood up quickly and moved closer to the bathroom door, holding my breath. I listened. A muffled voice came through. A man's voice. Housekeeping. Relief rushed through me so fast my knees felt weak. I knocked immediately, hard, fast. "Please," I called. "I'm in here." I knocked again and again. "Help me, I'm locked in." The knock on the room door paused. Then I heard the sound of keys. The room door opened. I could hear movement, footsteps inside the room now. "Hello?" the man called out, his voice uncertain. "I'm in the bathroom," I shouted. "The door is locked from the outside." I heard him approach the bathroom door. I knocked again. "I'm here," I said, my voice shaking now despite my efforts. "Please don't leave." The handle moved slightly from the outside. "Ma'am," the man said slowly. "Are you alone in there?" "Yes," I answered. "I shouldn't be." There was a pause. "I need to call my supervisor," he said. "Just stay there." "I'm not going anywhere," I replied quietly. I leaned my forehead against the door again, relief mixing with exhaustion. But even as hope flickered, something else followed it. Fear. Because when that door opened, questions would come. And Lena's version of events was already out there. I waited as the man stepped away. I could hear him speaking into a phone in low tones. Words drifted through. Guest, locked, bathroom. No response earlier. No response earlier. That meant someone had already tried to reach this room. My heart sank. Lena had not just locked me in. She had made sure no one would check. I heard footsteps returning. Then the sound of tools, metal against metal. The lock rattled. It took longer than I expected. Every second felt stretched thin. Finally, the handle turned. The door opened. Light flooded the bathroom. The man stood there, eyes wide. "Oh my," he said softly. I stepped forward slowly, my legs unsteady. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you so much." He nodded, still looking confused. "Your family said you left," he said carefully. There it was, out loud now. I met his eyes. "I did not," I said calmly. Something shifted in his expression. "I need to make a report," he said. "Yes," I answered. "You do." As he stepped aside to let me out, I glanced back at the bathroom one last time. That small locked space had shown me something important. Whatever Lena had planned did not include me speaking for myself. And now that I was out, I had to choose my next move carefully. Because this was no longer just about a locked door. It was about truth. The hallway felt brighter than it should have. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped out of the bathroom. The lights were the same as before. The carpet was the same dull pattern, but something inside me had changed. When fear loosens its grip, everything looks sharper, louder, more real. The housekeeping worker stood a little to the side, giving me space. His name tag read Carlos. His hands were still holding the small tool he had used on the lock, as if he didn't quite know what to do with them now. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Carlos asked gently. "I will be," I said. My voice surprised me. It was steadier than I felt. "Thank you for coming back." He nodded, then glanced toward the open room door. "Your room was marked as vacant." That sentence landed softly, but it carried weight. "Vacant?" I repeated. "Yes," he said. "Front desk note said the guest checked out early." I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Lena had gone further than I thought. "I didn't check out," I said calmly. "And I didn't leave." Carlos shifted his weight. "I need to call my supervisor." This isn't normal." "No," I agreed. "It isn't." He stepped away to make the call, speaking quietly into his radio. I stood just outside the bathroom door, my hand resting against the wall. I needed the solid feeling of it to remind myself that I was standing, that I was present, that I had not imagined any of this. While Carlos spoke, I looked around the room. The bed was neatly made. My purse was gone. So was my suitcase. Only my sweater lay folded on the chair, exactly where I had left it. That detail struck me hard. Lena hadn't packed everything. She had packed just enough to make her version believable. Carlos returned with a woman in a dark blazer. Her posture was straight, her expression controlled. Her name tag read Angela. "I'm Angela," she said. "Hotel operations manager." "Evelyn Carter," I replied. She nodded. "Carlos said you were locked inside the bathroom." "Yes," I said. "From the outside." Angela looked toward the door, then back at me. "Your reservation shows you checked out almost an hour ago." "I didn't," I said again. "Someone else spoke for me." Angela's lips pressed together slightly. "Who was traveling with you?" "My son, Michael Carter, and his wife, Lena Brooks." Angela made a note on her tablet. "Mrs. Brooks came to the front desk earlier," she said carefully. "She said you were unwell and wanted to leave quietly." I let that sit for a moment. "She said I was unwell," I repeated. "Yes." "And did she mention locking me in the bathroom?" I asked. Angela's eyes lifted from the screen. "No," she said. "Of course she didn't," I replied softly. Silence filled the room. Not awkward silence. Thinking silence. Angela looked around again. "Your belongings?" "Gone," I said. "Except that sweater." Angela followed my gaze. "So you were not present when checkout occurred?" "No," I said. "I was behind a locked door." Carlos cleared his throat. "I tried knocking earlier," he said. No one answered. I nodded. "Because no one wanted you to hear me." Angela exhaled slowly. "Mrs. Carter, I need to document this properly." "Yes," I said. "Please do." She asked me to sit on the edge of the bed while she asked questions. Her voice stayed professional, but I could sense the shift. This was no longer a simple misunderstanding. "What time did you last see your son?" she asked. "This morning," I said, before the bathroom door closed. "What time was that?" I gave my best estimate. "And Mrs. Brooks?" "She was with us." "Did you argue with her?" Angela asked. The question stung, though I understood why she asked it. "No," I said. "We didn't argue. We smiled." "We planned breakfast." Angela paused her typing and looked at me directly. "And you're saying she deliberately locked you in?" "Yes." Angela studied my face. "Not unkindly, carefully." "I believe you," she said quietly. "But I need evidence." I nodded. "I understand." She turned to Carlos. "Check the hallway cameras from this morning. Focus on this room." Carlos nodded and left. Angela turned back to me. "Mrs. Carter, are you safe to remain here alone for a few minutes?" I considered the question. "No," I said honestly. She nodded once. "I'll stay." That small act, her choosing to stay, eased something tight in my chest. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Angela spoke again. May I ask something personal? She said. Yes. Why would she want you gone without speaking to your son? The question echoed the one already circling in my mind. I don't know, I said. Not fully. But pieces were already forming. Angela's tablet chimed. Carlos returned, his face serious. We have footage, he said. Angela stood. Let's see it. They stepped into the hallway, but Angela turned back to me. Would you like to come? She asked. I stood slowly. Yes. We walked to a small office near the elevators. A screen flickered to life. Carlos pulled up the footage. There was the hallway. There was the door to my room. Timestamp confirmed the morning. I watched myself enter the bathroom, Lena following close behind. Then, the moment that made my breath catch, Lena stepped out. She looked both ways down the hallway. Then her hand reached back. She turned the lock. Slowly, deliberately. She paused for just a second. Then she walked away. No rush, no hesitation. I felt something settle deep inside me. Angela didn't speak. Carlos swallowed hard. There, he said quietly. That's clear. Angela nodded. Yes, it is. She turned to me. Mrs. Carter, I'm very sorry. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Can you contact your son? Angela asked. I will, I said. But not yet. She looked surprised. I want this documented first, I added. Properly. Angela nodded. We'll make a full incident report. As she spoke, I thought of Michael. How he would react when he saw this footage. How his face might change when calm words met undeniable proof. I was no longer trapped. But something else had begun. And whatever Lena thought she had finished that morning, she was wrong. Because Evelyn Carter was now standing in the light. The screen went dark, but the image stayed with me. Lena's hand on the lock. The pause. The calm walk away. I didn't need to watch it again. Angela saved the footage and printed a brief report. She explained procedures in a careful voice, but I heard only parts of it. My mind had already moved ahead, to the moment I had been trying not to imagine. Calling Michael. Angela handed my phone back to me. It had been retrieved from the front desk, still plugged into the charger, exactly where Lena had left it. The screen lit up when I touched it. I stared at Michael's name. For a long moment, I didn't move. Calling him meant changing everything. Once words were spoken, they couldn't be pulled back. Silence, at least, still gave me control. Angela watched me closely but said nothing. I stepped toward the window at the end of the hallway. The glass looked out over the parking lot. Cars moved in and out. Families loaded suitcases. Life went on, unaware. I pressed the call button. It rang once. Twice. Mom? Michael answered, his voice uncertain. Where are you? I closed my eyes. I'm still at the hotel, I said softly. There was a pause. That's not what Lena said, he replied. I know, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. She said you left early, Michael continued. She said you didn't feel well. I was locked in the bathroom, I said calmly. From the outside. Silence. I could hear his breathing now. That doesn't make sense, he said. I know, I repeated. Angela stepped back, giving me space. I appreciated that more than she knew. Mom, Michael said slowly, why would Lena do that? That's a question you'll have to ask her, I replied. But I wasn't alone in that bathroom, Michael. There are cameras. His breath caught. Cameras? Yes, I said. And hotel staff. And a written report. Another silence settled between us. I imagined his face, the crease in his forehead, when he tried to understand something that didn't fit his expectations. He had that crease since childhood. Where are you now? He asked. Still here, I said. In the room. I'm coming back, he said quickly. No, I said. The word surprised him. No? He repeated. Not yet, I said. I need you to listen first. I heard him swallow. I listened all my life, I continued quietly. Now I need you to listen to me. He didn't interrupt. I didn't leave, I said. I didn't pack. I didn't ask to go home. And I didn't lock myself anywhere. Michael exhaled slowly. I need to see this, he said. You will, I replied. But not in a hallway. Not in a rush. Another pause. "Where's Lena?" I asked. "She's in the car," he said. "She's upset." I looked at the window again. "So was I said. He didn't answer. "I'm not asking you to choose," I continued. "I'm asking you to be present." "I am," he said, but his voice sounded thin. "Come back," I said. "Alone." That request landed heavily. "I can't just—" he started. "You can," I said gently. "And you should." He was quiet for a long time. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he finally said. "Thank you," I replied. I ended the call before my voice could change. Angela approached carefully. "Would you like us to keep security nearby?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Quietly. She nodded. I returned to the room and sat on the chair by the window. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Waiting is something I know well. I waited for my husband to return from long shifts. I waited for Michael to come home past curfew. I waited through grief and years and unanswered questions. This wait felt different. This wait felt final. A knock came at the door. Angela opened it slightly and peeked out. Then she stepped aside. Michael stood there. He looked tired, confused, older than he had that morning. "Mom," he said. I stood slowly. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He looked around, as if expecting something to explain itself. "You look okay," he said weakly. "I am," I replied. "Now." He rubbed his hands together. "Lena said—" "I know what Lena said," I interrupted softly. He looked up at me. Angela cleared her throat. "Mr. Carter," she said, "we have documentation we'd like to show you." Michael nodded. They walked him to the small office again. I followed at a distance. I wanted him to walk into the truth on his own. The footage played. Michael leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the screen. When Lena's hand reached for the lock, he stiffened. When she paused, he flinched. When she walked away, his shoulders sagged. The room stayed quiet. "I didn't know," he said finally. "I know," I replied. He turned to me. His eyes were wet now. "She told me you wanted to leave," he said. "She said you didn't feel comfortable." "I wasn't comfortable," I said. "But not for the reason she gave." He covered his face with his hands for a moment. Angela spoke again. "We've completed the incident report," she said. "You're free to review it." Michael nodded numbly. When we stepped back into the hallway, he stopped. "I need to talk to her," he said. "Yes," I replied. "You do. But not here," I added. He looked at me. "Not with raised voices," I continued. "Not with accusations." He nodded slowly. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "You don't fix it," I replied. "You face it." We walked back toward the room together. As we reached the door, Michael stopped again. "Mom," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." I looked at him for a long moment. "I know," I said. "That's why I waited." That night, sleep did not come easily. I lay on the hotel bed fully dressed, the lights dimmed but not off. Darkness felt too close, too similar to that locked space. My body rested, but my mind kept moving, circling the same questions like birds that refused to land. Michael sat on the chair by the window, staring out at the parking lot. We had barely spoken since returning to the room. Words felt heavy, too heavy to lift carelessly. "Mom," he said finally without turning around. "I don't understand how I didn't see this." I studied the back of his head, the familiar slope of his shoulders, the same posture he had when he was a boy thinking hard about a problem. He didn't want to admit scared him. "Understanding comes after noticing," I said quietly. "You weren't noticing." He nodded slowly. "She's never done anything like this before," he said. "At least, not this openly." That small pause before his last words told me more than he realized. "Not openly," I repeated. He turned to face me then. "What do you mean?" I sat up a little straighter. "Michael, when something happens suddenly, we call it shocking. But when small things happen over time, we call them misunderstandings. That doesn't mean they don't matter." He frowned, thinking. "I want you to think back," I continued. "Not to today. To before this trip." He leaned back in the chair. I waited. Finally, he spoke. "She didn't want you to come." The words came out slowly, like he was testing them for truth. "She never said it directly," he added quickly. She just kept saying it might be stressful. That travel would be hard for you. I nodded. And you believed she was protecting me? Yes, he said. She was protecting something, I replied. Just not me. Silence settled again. Michael rubbed his face. Why didn't you tell me you felt uncomfortable around her? I looked at him for a long moment. Because I didn't want to put you in the middle, I said. And because discomfort alone is not proof. He looked away. That bathroom door, I continued, my voice steady, was proof. The knock at the door made us both jump. Michael stood quickly. I'll get it. When he opened the door, Lena Brooks stood there. Her eyes were red. Her face looked carefully arranged, upset enough to appear hurt, calm enough to appear reasonable. Michael, she said softly. Then she looked past him and saw me. Her expression changed, just for a second. Then it settled again. There you are, she said. I've been worried sick. I didn't answer. Michael stepped aside reluctantly. Come in, he said. Lena walked in slowly, her gaze never leaving me. I didn't know you were still here, she said to me. I thought you left. That's what you told everyone, I replied calmly. Her lips parted slightly as if surprised by my tone. I thought you wanted to go, she said. You said you weren't feeling well. I said I was tired, I corrected. Those are not the same thing. Michael shifted uncomfortably between us. Lena, he said, the hotel has footage. She froze. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just enough. What footage? She asked. The hallway camera, he said. Outside the room. Her eyes flicked to his, then back to mine. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I stood up slowly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply said, you turned the lock. The room went quiet. Michael stared at her now. Lena laughed softly. That's ridiculous. It's recorded, I said. Her smile faded. You're saying I locked you in? She asked Michael. Why would I do that? He didn't answer. Michael, she pressed, her voice sharpening slightly. You know me. He looked torn, conflicted. I placed a hand on the back of the chair beside me. You planned carefully, I said to Lena. You packed my things. You spoke for me. You marked the room vacant. Her eyes hardened. I was trying to help, she said. You don't understand how difficult it is managing everything. Help doesn't require silence, I replied. Michael finally spoke. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving her alone in the room? Lena turned to him. Because I knew you'd overreact. That sentence hung in the air. Michael blinked. Overreact? She sighed dramatically. You always take her side. I watched him then. Really watched him. That was the pattern. Not today. Not this trip. Long before. Lena stepped closer to him. I didn't think this would turn into such a big thing. It became a big thing, I said quietly, when I couldn't open the door. Her jaw tightened. Angela knocked lightly and stepped inside. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. Mrs. Carter, may I speak with you? I nodded. As I walked past Lena, I felt her eyes on me, sharp now, no softness left. Outside in the hallway, Angela lowered her voice. Mrs. Carter, given what's been documented, we recommend you relocate to another room for the night, or another hotel. I'll move rooms, I said. Not hotels. She nodded. When I returned inside, Michael looked at me with worry. I'm moving rooms, I said. Just for tonight. I'll come with you, he said quickly. No, I replied. You should stay here. He looked confused. Why? Because you need to hear her when I'm not in the room, I said. Lena crossed her arms. So now you're dividing us? I met her gaze calmly. No, I said. I'm stepping aside. Michael swallowed. I'll walk Mom to the new room, he said. Lena didn't argue this time. As we walked down the hallway together, Michael finally spoke again. I don't know what's happening, he said quietly. You will, I replied. Not all at once. But you will. At the door of my new room, he stopped. I'm scared, he admitted. So was I said. Behind that door. He nodded slowly. As he turned back toward Lena, I watched him go. Not with anger. Not with fear, but with a growing certainty. The truth had started moving. Slowly. quietly, and it would not stop. That night I slept in short pieces. Not real sleep, just pauses. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the click again. The sound didn't scare me anymore, but it stayed, like a reminder that silence can be chosen and silence can be forced. Morning light found its way through the thin hotel. Curtains, pale, gentle, almost kind. I lay still and listened to the quiet hum of the building waking up. Somewhere a door closed. Somewhere else a cart rolled down the hallway. I sat up slowly and placed my feet on the floor. "You're awake," I said to myself. That mattered. I washed my face and looked at my reflection again. I noticed something different this time. My eyes didn't look confused anymore. They looked alert. There was a knock at the door. Soft, careful. I opened it to see Michael standing there alone. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes tired. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, leaning against it for a moment like his body needed support. "She didn't sleep," he said quietly. I nodded. "Neither did you." He gave a weak smile. "No." We sat across from each other, the small table between us untouched. "She keeps saying she didn't mean for things to go that far," he continued. "That she just wanted you out of the way so we could talk." I folded my hands. "Out of the way," I repeated. He looked at me. "I told her that wasn't okay." "That's good," I said. "But she keeps saying you misunderstood," he added. "That the lock was accidental." I didn't respond immediately. "Michael," I said finally, "accidents panic. They don't pack suitcases." He looked down. "She said she was trying to protect me," he murmured. I leaned back slightly. "From what?" He didn't answer. We sat in silence for a few seconds. "Did she say anything else?" I asked. He hesitated. "That you've always judged her," he admitted. "That you never accepted her." I felt that one. Not like a sharp pain, but like a dull ache. "I accepted her role in your life," I said slowly. "Acceptance doesn't mean surrendering my voice." He nodded, eyes still lowered. "She also said," he continued, "that you exaggerate things." I looked at him steadily. "Do I?" I asked. He met my gaze. "No," he said. "You don't." That answer mattered more than anything else he had said. "I need time," he added. "To think. To understand how this happened." "You should take it," I replied. "Rushed decisions often belong to other people's plans." He exhaled. "I'm going to speak to a lawyer today," he said quietly. I raised my eyebrows slightly. "For what reason?" "Not to punish," he clarified quickly. "To understand. About reports. About documentation. About responsibility." I nodded once. "That's wise." He looked surprised. "You're not angry?" "I am," I said calmly. "But anger clouds listening." "I need clarity." He stood up slowly. "I'll come back later," he said. "All right," I replied. As he reached the door, he turned back. "Mom," he said, his voice thick. "I'm sorry I didn't hear you knocking." I didn't answer with words. I just nodded. After he left, I sat alone for a long time. I thought about the way Lena had spoken. Calm, certain, practiced. I thought about how easily she had filled the space where my voice should have been. That wasn't just about me. That was about control. Around midday, my phone rang again. It was Angela. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "we've finalized the internal report. I wanted you to have a copy." "Thank you," I replied. "I appreciate your thoroughness." "There's one more thing," she added. "Mrs. Brooks requested a copy as well." I closed my eyes briefly. "That figures," I said. "She claims she needs it for clarity," Angela continued. "Clarity doesn't fear records," I replied. Angela paused. "If you need anything further, please let us know." "I will," I said. After the call, I sat by the window and watched people below. Families walking together, couples arguing quietly, children running ahead, unaware of the weight adults carry behind polite smiles. I wondered how many truths were walking beside lies, unnoticed. That afternoon, Michael returned again. This time, his posture was different. Straighter, quieter. "I spoke to someone," he said. "And?" I asked. They said what happened is serious, he replied. Not loud serious, but documented serious. I nodded. They also said intent matters, he added. Yes, I said. It always does. He looked at me carefully. What do you want to do? The question surprised me. What do you mean? I asked. What do you want? He repeated. Not what you think should happen. I considered that. I want truth to stay visible, I said. That's all. He nodded slowly. She's scared now, he admitted. Fear arrives late, I replied. He sighed. She keeps saying you'll turn everyone against her. I shook my head gently. Truth doesn't need help. That evening, Lena did not come to my room. That told me something. Silence can also be a tactic. Before bed, I wrote a few notes on paper. Times, names, details. Not because I wanted conflict, but because memory fades and paper does not. As I placed the pen down, I felt something unfamiliar. Not relief. Readiness. Whatever came next would not be rushed, would not be loud, would not be cruel, but it would be clear. And clarity, I had learned, can be unsettling for those who prefer shadows. The morning after Michael spoke to the lawyer, I woke up with a strange calm inside me. Not peace, not relief. Clarity. Clarity feels different when it arrives late in life. It doesn't rush in like excitement. It settles slowly, like dust after a long drive. You don't notice it at first, but once it's there, everything looks sharper. I sat at the small desk near the window and opened my notebook again. I hadn't written in it for years, not since my husband passed away. Back then, writing had helped me keep track of days when grief made everything blur together. Now it served another purpose. I wrote Lena Brooks at the top of the page. Under it, I wrote dates. Not accusations. Not feelings. Just moments. The first time she corrected me in front of guests. The time she canceled my visit because Michael was overwhelmed. Without asking him. The way she insisted on handling calls. Bookings, plans, always with a smile. Always with control. Each memory came back quietly, as if it had been waiting for permission. I paused when my phone buzzed. A message from Michael. She's saying things that don't match. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, the day was ordinary. Cars, sunlight, movement. Ordinary days are where patterns hide. Michael knocked an hour later. He looked tired but different from before. Less confused. More alert. She says she didn't pack your things, he said as soon as he sat down. That the hotel staff must have moved them. I raised my eyebrows slightly. The staff? I asked. That's what she claims, he said. But Angela confirmed no one touched your luggage. I nodded. She also says she thought the bathroom door unlocked itself, he continued. That she didn't check. I waited. But, he added, the footage shows her turning the lock and testing it. I said nothing. Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Mom, he said, why does she keep changing details? I folded my hands in my lap. Because fixed stories don't need adjustment, I replied. Only fragile ones do. He let out a long breath. She told me you've always wanted us apart, he said quietly. That one hurt. Not sharply, deeply. I wanted you safe, I replied. And respected. That's not the same thing. He nodded. I asked her why she didn't wake me before leaving the room, he continued. She said she didn't want to disturb me. I looked at him. Did that sound like her? He shook his head slowly. No, she wakes me for smaller things. That small observation mattered. Michael pulled out his phone. There's more. He showed me a message thread. Dates from weeks before the trip. Lena writing to a friend. Traveling with his mom again. Wish there was a way to get space without drama. Another message. Sometimes silence is easier. I closed my eyes briefly. She was thinking about silence before the trip, I said. Michael swallowed. She says those messages don't mean anything. They mean timing, I replied. He looked up. Timing? Yes, I said. Thoughts become actions when opportunity appears. Michael leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I feel like I'm seeing her for the first time, he admitted. Or you're seeing what was always there, I said gently. He looked at me. Why didn't you tell me before? I considered that carefully. Because I hoped I was wrong, I answered. And because I didn't want to teach you suspicion before necessity. He nodded slowly. That afternoon, Angela called again. Mrs. Carter, she said. We've received a request for the footage from an external party. I knew who. Michael's lawyer, I asked. No, she replied. Mrs. Brooks contacted someone on her own. That detail settled heavily. She's building something, I said quietly. Angela hesitated. We're releasing footage only through proper channels. Thank you, I said. After the call, I sat quietly for a long time. Control looks different when it's slipping. Lena knocked that evening. I didn't open the door right away. I waited. Waiting tells you a lot. When I finally opened it, she stood there without Michael. Her posture was tense. Her smile absent. We need to talk, she said. Yes, I replied, we do. She stepped inside. I never wanted this to get so complicated, she began. Complicated doesn't start with locks, I said calmly. She flinched. You're making this into something it's not, she insisted. I was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed people ask for help, I replied. They don't remove voices. Her eyes hardened. You've always judged me, she said. I've always observed you, I answered. There's a difference. She crossed her arms. Michael listens to you more than me. That was the first honest sentence she'd spoken. Listening isn't possession, I said. It's earned. Her jaw tightened. You think you're better than me, she said. I think actions leave marks, I replied. Even quiet ones. She took a step closer. What do you want? I met her gaze steadily. I want nothing from you, I said. But I won't disappear for your comfort. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned toward the door. This isn't over, she said. No, I replied. It's just visible now. After she left, I sat down slowly. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Michael arrived later that night. She told me you threatened her, he said. I didn't, I replied. I know, he said quietly. Your voice doesn't sound like that. He sat across from me. I'm starting to understand something, he continued. She wants control, not partnership. I nodded. And you? I asked. He looked up. I want truth, even if it's uncomfortable. That answer mattered. I opened my notebook and added one more line. Visibility changes everything. Because once something is seen clearly, it cannot return to shadow. The morning felt heavier than the nights before it. Not because something loud had happened, but because something quiet was about to. I woke before the alarm and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting on my knees. Outside the window, the sky was a soft gray, the kind that makes everything feel unfinished. I listened to the building wake up again, doors opening, distant voices, the muted roll of carts. I knew this day would not end the same way it began. There was a knock at the door. Not soft this time. Firm, careful, intentional. I opened it to see Michael standing there, fully dressed, his jacket already on. His face was set in a way I recognized from years ago, the look he wore when he had made a decision, but hadn't yet spoken it aloud. Can we walk? He asked. Yes, I said. We walked down the hallway and out into the cool morning air. The parking lot was nearly empty. A few cars moved slowly past us. We chose a bench near the edge of the property where the noise softened. Michael sat down and leaned forward, elbows on his thighs. I asked her one last time, he said. I waited. I asked her to tell me exactly what happened, he continued. Without explanations, without blame. And? I asked. She couldn't, he said quietly. Every time I asked a direct question, she answered a different one. That answer didn't surprise me. She said you're manipulating me, he added. That you're using your age to control the situation. I looked straight ahead. Control looks loud, I said. This has been quiet. Michael nodded. I told her that. He was silent for a moment, then spoke again. I told her I needed space. That sentence settled between us. Space, I repeated gently. Yes, he said. Not forever, but enough to think without pressure. I turned to him. How did she respond? She cried, he said. Then she blamed you. Then she blamed the hotel. Then she said I was choosing sides. I nodded once. When someone frames truth as sides, I said, they're afraid of standing alone. Michael rubbed his hands together. I didn't leave the room angry. I left it clear. That matters, I said. He looked at me then, really looked, as if measuring something he hadn't measured before. Mom, he said, I need to ask you something difficult. You can, I replied. If this had never happened, he said slowly, would you have stayed quiet forever? The question reached deeper than he realized. I thought carefully before answering. No, I said, but I would have waited longer. He nodded. That's what scares me. What? I asked. That she didn't just push you, he said. She rushed you. We sat in silence again, the wind moving gently across the lot. I've scheduled a meeting, he said finally, with a mediator, not a courtroom. Just a place to speak with witnesses present. I raised my eyebrows slightly. I invited Angela, he added, and the hotel documentation. That's thoughtful, I said. I invited her too, he continued. Lena. I felt a tightening in my chest, but I didn't let it rise to my face. When? I asked. This afternoon, he said. I nodded slowly. I want you there, he added. Not to speak over anyone, just to be present. I can do that, I said. When we returned to the hotel, Lena was already waiting in the lobby. She stood near the window, her arms folded tightly, her posture rigid. When she saw us walk in together, something flickered across her face. Not anger, not sadness, but calculation. She followed us into the small conference room without a word. Angela arrived shortly after, carrying a folder. The mediator, Thomas Reed, introduced himself calmly and explained the rules. No interruptions, no raised voices, facts before feelings. Lena smiled tightly and nodded. Michael sat between us. Thomas began gently. We're here to understand what occurred and how trust was affected. Lena spoke first. I never intended harm, she said. I was overwhelmed. I made a mistake. Thomas nodded. Can you explain the decision to lock the bathroom door? Lena blinked. I didn't lock it. Angela slid the folder forward. The footage shows otherwise, she said calmly. Lena's smile disappeared. That footage doesn't show intent, Lena said quickly. It shows a moment. Thomas turned to Michael. What did you understand at the time? Michael inhaled deeply. I believed my mother had left willingly. And now? Thomas asked. I know she didn't, Michael replied. Silence filled the room. Thomas turned to me. Mrs. Carter, do you wish to add anything? I shook my head slightly. I'm here to listen. That answer shifted something. Lena looked at me sharply. You don't need to pretend to be quiet now, she said. You've already won. I met her gaze. This isn't about winning, I said calmly. It's about presence. Thomas raised a hand gently. Let's stay with facts. Angela spoke again. Mrs. Brooks, you also told the front desk the room was vacant. Lena hesitated. I thought she'd already left. But you packed her belongings, Angela replied. Selective belongings. Lena's jaw tightened. Michael leaned forward. Why my mother's purse? He asked. Why her phone? Lena's voice rose slightly. Because she forgets things. Michael didn't flinch. She forgets to rush, he said. Not to exist. That sentence landed hard. Thomas leaned back slightly. It appears control of communication was central here. Lena stood up abruptly. I refuse to sit here and be painted as some kind of villain. No one used that word, Thomas replied calmly. Lena turned to Michael. You're letting this happen. Michael stood up slowly. No, he said. I'm allowing clarity. He turned to Thomas. I need time apart. Structured time, with boundaries. Thomas nodded. That's reasonable. Lena stared at Michael as if she hadn't heard him correctly. You're choosing her, she said. Michael shook his head. I'm choosing honesty. The room went quiet again. After the meeting, Lena left without looking back. Michael remained seated for a moment, his shoulders heavy. I didn't think it would end like this, he said quietly. It hasn't ended, I replied. It's shifted. He nodded slowly. As we walked back toward the elevator, he stopped. Mom, he said, thank you for not shouting. I looked at him gently. Some truths don't need volume. That evening, alone in my room, I opened my notebook again. I added another line beneath the last. Pressure reveals priorities. Because when the weight increases, what matters most rises to the surface. The quiet after truth is different from the quiet before it. Before, silence feels uncertain, like something hiding. After, it feels heavy, like something has finally landed. The morning after the meeting, I woke up without confusion. My body still felt tired, but my mind was clear. That surprised me. I had expected regret, or fear, or at least doubt. Instead, there was a steady stillness inside me, the kind that comes when you know you didn't step away from yourself. I made a cup of coffee in the hotel room. The machine hissed and clicked, filling the space with a familiar sound. Ordinary sounds mattered more now. They reminded me that life continues even when relationships pause. I sat by the window again, the same chair, the same view, but nothing felt the same. Below, people crossed the parking lot carrying bags, talking on phones, laughing. None of them knew what had shifted inside this building. None of them knew that a door had closed, and another one had opened quietly somewhere else. There was a knock. Soft, not urgent. I opened the door to find Michael standing there again. This time, he didn't look confused. He looked thoughtful, the way he used to look when he was younger. When he finally understood a lesson but hadn't yet figured out how to live with it. "Can I sit with you for a bit?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He entered and sat across from me without speaking. We didn't rush the moment. Rushing had caused enough damage already. "She left early this morning," he said finally. "Lena?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "She packed quietly. Didn't ask me to come with her." I nodded once. "That must feel strange," I said. "It does," he admitted. "But also revealing." I waited. "She didn't argue," he continued. "Didn't explain. She just said she needed distance." "Distance is often requested when control no longer works," I replied gently. He nodded slowly. "I stayed," he added. "I needed time to think without anyone shaping the moment for me." That sentence mattered. We sat in silence again. "Mom," he said, his voice lower now. "I keep thinking about that morning." I didn't interrupt. "I keep replaying it," he continued. How easily I believed her. How quickly I accepted your absence. He looked down at his hands. "That part hurts the most," he admitted. I leaned forward slightly. "Pain is a teacher," I said softly. "But it doesn't mean punishment. It means awareness." He looked up at me. "I should have checked," he said. "Yes," I replied. "But you didn't." He nodded. "And now I know why that matters." I didn't need to say more. That afternoon, Angela called one last time. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "I wanted to confirm that all documentation has been finalized and secured." "Thank you," I replied. "There's also been a request to preserve the footage long-term," she added. I knew who had made it. "That's fine," I said calmly. "Truth doesn't expire." After the call, I packed my things slowly. Not because I was leaving in a hurry, but because I wanted to leave with intention. Each folded item felt like a small decision reclaimed. Michael watched quietly from the doorway. "I'll drive you home tomorrow," he said. "All right," I replied. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since the trip began. No dreams, no echoes of clicks or locks, just rest. In the morning, as we checked out, the front desk staff greeted me warmly. Angela nodded at me with quiet respect. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. That was important. Outside, Michael loaded my suitcase into the car. He paused before closing the trunk. "Mom," he said, "things are going to change." "Yes," I said. "They already have." He hesitated. "I don't know what that means for my marriage." "I know," I replied gently. "And I won't tell you." He looked relieved by that. As we drove, the road stretched ahead of us. Long, open, uncertain. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't need to. Sometimes understanding settles best in silence. When we reached my house, Michael carried my bag inside and set it down gently, like he used to when he was a teenager trying to show care without saying it out loud. "I'll check on you later," he said. "I'll be here," I replied. After he left, I walked through my home slowly. Each room welcomed me back. Familiar walls, Familiar light. I sat in my living room and opened my notebook again. I didn't write about Lena. I didn't write about locks or footage. I wrote one sentence. Being heard is not loud. It is steady. I closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf. Outside, the afternoon sun moved slowly across the floor. And for the first time since that bathroom door closed, I felt fully present in my own life again. The first call came 2 days after I returned home. It was Ruth Carter, Michael's aunt. She didn't greet me the way she usually did. No jokes, no warmth folded into politeness. Just a careful pause before she spoke. "Evelyn," she said, "Michael told us some things." "I assumed he would," I replied calmly. Another pause. "He said there was an incident," Ruth continued. "At the hotel." "Yes," I said. "There was." Ruth cleared her throat. "Lena is saying something very different." "I expected that too," I replied. Silence again. "You sound very certain," she said finally. "I am," I answered. Ruth sighed. "Families don't usually air things like this." "Neither do locked doors," I said quietly. That ended the conversation. Not abruptly, not angrily, but clearly. Over the next few days, the pattern repeated. A cousin called to check on me. A church friend asked if I was feeling better now. Someone else asked if I was sure I remembered things correctly. Each question carried the same weight. Doubt. Not because the facts were unclear, but because comfort prefers familiar narratives. Michael visited me that weekend. He looked worn down, not from arguing, but from translating truth into spaces that didn't want to hear it. "They keep asking why you didn't shout," he said quietly. "Why you didn't call out louder. Why you waited." I poured tea into 2 cups and slid one toward him. "People imagine fear loudly," I said. "They don't understand quiet survival." He nodded slowly. "I showed them the report," he added. "Not the footage, just the documentation." "And?" I asked. "Some stopped asking questions," he said. "Others started asking different ones. That was expected. When control loosens," I said, "curiosity increases." Michael leaned back. "I met with the lawyer again." I waited. "He said documentation matters," Michael continued. "So does consistency. He suggested a written account from you." I nodded. "I've already started one." His eyebrows lifted. "You have?" "Yes," I replied. "Dates, times, words used. Nothing emotional." "That's very methodical," he said. "I'm done being dramatic in other people's imaginations," I replied. Michael exhaled, almost a laugh. "That helps," he said. "More than you know." He hesitated, then added, "Lena's family reached out." I didn't respond immediately. "They want a meeting," he continued. "They think things can be smoothed over." "Smoothed?" I repeated softly. "They're worried about appearances," he said. "Appearances smooth easily," I replied. "Truth does not." Michael nodded. "I told them not yet," he said. "That I need time." "That was wise," I replied. He looked at me. "You're not asking me to cut anyone off." "No," I said. "That's not my place. But you're not asking me to rush either," he added. "That's also not my place," I replied. He smiled faintly. "You're giving me room." "I learned long ago," I said, "that space reveals intent faster than pressure." That night, after Michael left, I sat alone in my living room and watched the evening news with the volume low. Faces talked. Stories passed. None of them belonged to me, and yet something had shifted. People around me were adjusting, not because I demanded it, but because silence had ended. I received a message from Angela the next morning. "Just checking in. Documentation remains secured. Let me know if you need copies forwarded." I thanked her and closed my phone. Later that afternoon, Ruth called again. Her voice sounded different this time. "Evelyn," she said, "I watched the hallway footage." I didn't answer right away. "I didn't want to," she admitted. "But Michael insisted." "And?" I asked. She swallowed. "I'm sorry I questioned you." "I accept that," I replied. Another pause. "I didn't realize how calm it was," she said. What she did. "Calm can be deliberate," I said. "Yes," Ruth replied quietly. "I see that now. That was enough." No apology tour. No public statements. Just recognition. By the end of the week, the questions slowed. Not because everyone agreed, but because certainty makes argument tiring. I returned to my routines. Morning walks, grocery lists, phone calls with old friends who asked how I was, not what happened. One afternoon, Michael called and said, "I'm drafting boundaries." "For yourself?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "For communication, for visits, for decisions." "That's good," I said. "I learned something," he added. "Silence without consent is power. Silence with consent is peace." I smiled to myself. "That's a lesson worth keeping," I replied. That night, I opened my notebook again. I added another line. Not everyone needs to agree. Some only need to see. And then I closed it. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Plain. White. No urgency written on it. But I recognized the weight of it before I opened it. Inside was a formal summary. Dates, references, acknowledgments. Not accusations. Not emotions. Just alignment. The kind of document that exists to keep memories from being rewritten later. I placed it on the table and made tea. Rushing paperwork only invites mistakes. When I finished reading, I folded the pages neatly and slid them back into the envelope. I didn't feel relief. I felt steadiness. There is a difference. Relief fades. Steadiness stays. Michael came over that afternoon. He didn't bring the tension with him this time. He brought resolve. "I signed the boundaries today," he said after we sat down. I waited. "Communication limits," he continued. "No speaking for others. No decisions made without presence. No private arrangements that affect someone else." I nodded. "Clear." "I also sent copies," he added. "To both sides of the family." "That takes courage," I said. "It takes exhaustion," he replied honestly. We shared a quiet smile. He looked around my living room, taking in the small details, the plant by the window, the framed photo of him as a child, the notebook resting on the shelf. "I used to think being calm meant avoiding conflict," he said. "Now I think it means choosing where conflict belongs." I leaned back. "Conflict belongs where facts are welcome." He nodded. There was another pause, then he spoke again. "She asked me if you were trying to take her place," he said. I didn't answer right away. "What did you say?" I asked. "That there isn't a place to take," he replied. "There are roles, and each one has limits." That answer told me everything I needed to know. The following days were quiet. Not empty, quiet. No surprise calls. No dramatic messages. No sudden apologies shaped for effect. Just space. Space has a way of revealing what noise hides. I returned to my routines with intention. I walked the same streets, shopped at the same stores, waved to the same neighbors. Some asked questions. Most didn't. Those who mattered asked how I was feeling, not what I was proving. One afternoon, I received a short message from Lena. "I'm stepping back for now. I need time." I read it once. Then I put the phone down. Time is not something you grant or deny. It happens. Michael called later that evening. "She didn't ask you for forgiveness," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "She asked herself for distance." He was silent for a moment. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted. "That's all right," I said. "Certainty isn't required for integrity." He exhaled slowly. "I used to think clarity would solve everything." "It doesn't," I replied. "But it prevents confusion from pretending to be peace." That night, I opened my notebook again. I didn't add many words. Just one line. Boundaries don't punish. They preserve. I closed the notebook and turned off the light. In the days that followed, the world adjusted around the truth. Not loudly. Not all at once, but steadily. Invitations changed tone. Conversations shortened. Assumptions dissolved. And I noticed something else. I was no longer rehearsing explanations in my head. That, more than anything, told me I had stepped out of defense and into presence. One evening, as the sun lowered itself across my living room floor, I realized something simple and profound. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't chased validation. I hadn't disappeared. And that balance, that quiet firmness, would guide whatever came next. There is a kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything from you. It doesn't demand explanation. It doesn't wait for approval. It simply arrives and stays. That was the quiet I woke up with one morning. Nearly 2 weeks after I returned home, sunlight lay across the edge of my bed, warm and unhurried. I stayed still for a while, listening to my own breathing. No rush, no ache in my chest, just presence. I made breakfast slowly: toast, eggs, coffee, poured carefully so it wouldn't spill. Small actions done with intention feel different when you're no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. I carried my plate to the table and sat down. For the first time in a long while, my thoughts didn't circle around what someone might say next. They rested where they were. That was new. Later that morning, I opened my notebook again, not to add a record, but to read. I flipped through the pages and saw the lines I had written over days and nights. Each one was simple. Each one was steady. I realized something as I read them. I hadn't written from anger. I hadn't written from fear. I had written from clarity. That mattered. The phone rang around noon. It was Michael. "I'm at the park near your house," he said. "Do you want to walk?" "Yes," I replied. We met near the old oak tree where I used to bring him when he was little. The bench was worn smooth by years of people sitting with their thoughts. We sat there without speaking for a few minutes, watching leaves move gently in the breeze. "I keep thinking about what you said," Michael began. "About not rehearsing explanations." I nodded. "I didn't realize how much energy I spent explaining my choices to everyone," he continued. "Even before this." "That's common," I said, "when we confuse permission with peace." He smiled faintly. "I'm learning." We walked slowly along the path, our steps matching without effort. "I want to tell you something," he said. "You can," I replied. "I told her," he said carefully, "that whatever happens between us, you won't be placed in the middle again." I stopped walking and turned to face him. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I meant it," he added. "Not as a reaction. As a rule." "That's how rules last," I replied. He looked relieved, not because the situation was solved, but because it had shape now. Shape gives the mind something to hold. As we walked back toward the bench, Michael asked, "Do you feel finished with this?" I considered the question. "Finished?" I repeated. "Yes," he said. "Inside." I thought about the locked door, the hallway, the footage, the meetings, the phone calls, the doubts that came from others and the steadiness that came from within. "I feel settled," I said. "That's different from finished." He nodded slowly. That afternoon, after Michael left, I did something small but meaningful. I rearranged my living room, not dramatically. Just a chair moved closer to the window. A lamp shifted to soften the light in the evenings. A framed photo placed where I could see it without trying. Environment reflects inner life more than we realize. As the day turned toward evening, I sat in that chair and watched the sun slide lower. I thought about how many times in my life I had mistaken endurance for acceptance. Endurance is quiet, but it's heavy. Acceptance is quiet, but it's light. That distinction had taken years to learn. The following day, I received a short message from Ruth. "I wanted to thank you for how you handled everything. You didn't make us choose. You made us see." I read it once, then set my phone down. Seeing lasts longer than choosing. That night, I cooked a simple dinner and ate it at the table instead of in front of the television. I lit a small candle, not for mood, but for mindfulness. The flame reminded me that steadiness can be gentle. Before bed, I opened my notebook one last time that week. I added a final line for this chapter of my life. "Closure doesn't erase what happened. It teaches you where to stand." I closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf. As I turned off the light, I felt something rare and valuable. Not victory, not relief, alignment. And alignment, I had learned, is the quietest form of strength. Closure doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through routine, through structure, through decisions that no longer need emotional approval. The week ended without surprises. That alone felt like progress. On Friday morning, Michael came by earlier than usual. He didn't sit down right away. He stood near the doorway, keys in his hand as if he was between two places. "I finalized things," he said. I waited. "I filed the written boundaries with my attorney," he continued. Not for confrontation. For record. I nodded. Records protect memory. Yes, he said. That's what he said, too. Michael sat down finally and rubbed his palms together slowly. I also requested copies of everything from the hotel, he added. Footage, reports, time logs. That's thorough, I said. It needed to be, he replied. This can't become a matter of opinions later. I looked at him carefully. You're not doing this for me alone, I said. He shook his head. No, I'm doing it so this pattern doesn't repeat itself. That sentence told me he had crossed an internal line. There's one more thing, he said. Yes, I replied. I told Lena that any future communication involving you must include you. Directly, he said. No intermediaries. No summaries. That's fair, I replied. She didn't respond, he added. Silence again was speaking. Michael stood up and walked to the window, staring outside for a moment. I don't feel angry, he said. I feel reorganized. I smiled slightly. That's what clarity does. Later that afternoon, my own phone rang. It was Thomas Reed. Mrs. Carter, he said, I wanted to check in. Based on what was documented, you have the option to file a formal statement independent of family proceedings. I know, I replied. There's no pressure, he added. Sometimes people just want acknowledgement on record. I want accuracy, I said calmly. Not escalation. That's a wise distinction, he replied. After the call, I sat quietly for a long time. I thought about how easily situations change when paper exists, when words are written, when timelines are fixed. That evening, Michael returned one last time before the weekend. I won't be around much the next few days, he said. I need to settle things on my end. I understand, I replied. Before leaving, he paused at the door. I want you to know something, he said. Whatever happens next, I won't allow silence to be used around you again. I looked at him steadily. That's all I ever needed, I said. When he left, the house felt calm, not empty. I cooked dinner and ate slowly. I washed the dishes by hand, feeling the warm water against my fingers. Small physical sensations anchor you when life has been abstract for too long. Later, I opened my notebook again. This time, I didn't add a line. I closed it. Some chapters don't need final sentences. They need firm endings. Before bed, I stood by the window and looked out into the quiet street. Porch lights glowed softly. Somewhere a dog barked once and then went silent again. I thought about that bathroom door. Not with fear. With distance. Distance is the first sign of healing. As I turned off the light, one thought stayed with me. Calm, clear, unwavering. Preparation is not revenge. Structure is not punishment. Clarity is protection. And with that understanding settled inside me, I knew I was ready for what came next. Not emotionally, practically. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives disguised as paperwork. The morning I decided to act, nothing dramatic happened. No rush of anger. No speech rehearsed in my head. Just a steady knowing that waiting had done its work. And now structure was required. I dressed carefully, not formally. Comfortable shoes, a simple coat. The kind of outfit that doesn't ask to be noticed but doesn't disappear either. Before leaving the house, I opened my notebook one last time. Not to write. To check. Dates were there. Times were there. Names were there. Nothing exaggerated. Nothing softened. Accuracy is a kind of respect, even for difficult truth. I locked my door and drove across town to a small office building with tinted windows and no sign meant to impress anyone. The name on the door read Elaine Porter, legal consultant. Michael had suggested her. She's quiet, he'd said. She listens more than she speaks. That mattered to me. Inside, the waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and paper. No television. No loud phones. Just a desk, a chair, and a woman in her late 50s reading something carefully. Evelyn Carter? She asked. Yes, I replied. She stood and shook my hand firmly. I'm Elaine. Her office was simple. Files stacked neatly, no clutter, no unnecessary decorations. Tell me what you want, she said once we were seated. I appreciated that she didn't ask what happened. I want a record that cannot be reshaped, I replied. Elaine nodded slowly. That's reasonable. I handed her the folder I had prepared. She didn't skim. She read. Time passed quietly. I watched the light move across the wall while she worked. When she finished, she closed the folder and looked at me. You were isolated without consent, she said. Your communication was interrupted. Your presence was misrepresented. Yes, I replied. And you're not asking to accuse, she continued. You're asking to document? Yes. Elaine leaned back slightly. That's a strong position. I've lived long enough, I said, to know when silence needs support. She smiled faintly. We can file an independent affidavit, she said. Not against a person, but in defense of events as they occurred. I nodded. There's also a step you may want to consider, she added. Not now, later. What step? I asked. Formal notice, she said. That no one may speak on your behalf without consent, especially in shared family or medical situations. I felt something settle inside me. That would have helped earlier, I said. Yes, she replied. That's why it helps later. We reviewed language together. Every word mattered. Not emotional words. Clear ones. No assumptions. No labels. Just sequence. When I signed the document, my hand did not shake. That surprised me. Afterward, Elaine placed the papers into a folder and labeled it carefully. This doesn't escalate, she said. It stabilizes. Exactly, I replied. When I left her office, the day looked the same as before. Cars moved. People walked. Nothing had shifted visibly. But structure had been placed. That afternoon, Michael called. How did it go? He asked. Well, I replied. It's on record now. He exhaled slowly. Good. I didn't name anyone, I added. I know, he said. That's why it matters. There was a pause. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. I closed my eyes briefly. Thank you, I replied. That evening, I cooked dinner and ate slowly without the television on. I noticed how calm my body felt, how my shoulders rested instead of tensing. Action taken at the right time brings rest, not stress. Before bed, I opened my notebook again. I added one line, not for memory, but for grounding. Preparation protects presence. I closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf. This was not the end of action. It was the beginning of stability. Structure does its work quietly. The week after my visit to Elaine Porter, nothing exploded. No urgent calls. No sudden apologies. No angry messages typed and erased. That was exactly how I knew the step had landed where it needed to. Paper doesn't argue. It waits. Elaine called on Wednesday morning. The affidavit has been logged, she said. Time-stamped, cross-referenced. Thank you, I replied. There's also the formal notice, she added. We can send it through neutral channels. Yes, I said. Please do. The language had been careful. Not cold, not sharp. Just clear. No one may speak on my behalf without my written consent. No decisions affecting my movement, lodging, or communication may be made in my absence. Any emergency claims must be verified directly. Nothing personal. Nothing emotional. Just presence protected in writing. Elaine sent copies to Michael, to the family mediator Thomas Reed, and to a general family contact list that had been used before for travel planning. Not to accuse anyone, to establish a rule. Michael came by that evening. He looked different again, lighter. Not because the situation was over, but because it was contained. They received it, he said. I waited. No one argued with the wording, he continued. There's nothing to argue with. That's the point, I replied. He sat down and let out a long breath. I didn't realize how much pressure I was carrying until it lifted, he admitted. That happens when responsibility becomes shared, I said, instead of assumed. He nodded. Ruth called, he added. She said it made things simpler. Simplicity is often mistaken for coldness, I replied. It isn't. Over the next few days, I noticed small changes. Messages came directly to me instead of through Michael. Travel plans were asked, not announced. Questions replaced assumptions. No one mentioned the hotel. No one needed to. Structure had moved the conversation forward without reopening wounds. One afternoon, I received a brief message from Lena. I understand there are new rules. I'll respect them. I read it once. Then I placed the phone down. Understanding wasn't required. Compliance was, Michael called later. She didn't ask to discuss it, he said. She just acknowledged it. That's appropriate, I replied. He was quiet for a moment. I think she realizes something changed, he said. Yes, I replied. Access. That evening, I went for a walk around my neighborhood. The air was cool, the sky soft with fading light. I noticed how my steps felt lighter, how my shoulders no longer tightened when my phone buzzed. Protection does that. It returns energy. When I got home, I opened my notebook again. I didn't write much, just a reminder to myself. Rules don't harden the heart. They soften the future. I closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf. For the first time in weeks, I didn't wonder what the next message would bring. That too was impact. Independence is not loud. It doesn't announce itself with speeches or raised voices. It settles into your days, through decisions that look ordinary to others and feel solid to you. I started with the practical things. On Monday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a short list. I had written the night before. No rush, no drama, just order. First, medical access. I called my primary clinic and asked for a simple update. Not a change in care, a change in clarity. I requested that all information, appointments, and emergency notifications be confirmed directly with me. No intermediaries unless I named them in writing. The nurse on the line paused, then said, "That's easy to do." Easy. I gave her Michael's name as an emergency contact, with limits. Information shared, decisions not delegated. When I hung up, I felt something shift. Health is personal. Access should be precise. Next, travel. I opened my laptop and reviewed my accounts, reservations, loyalty numbers, payment methods. I changed passwords calmly one by one. I updated preferences to require my confirmation for any booking tied to my name. I didn't remove anyone. I added consent. Later that afternoon, Michael came by. "You're reorganizing," he said, noticing the papers neatly stacked on the table. "I'm simplifying," I replied. He smiled. "Same thing, really." "I added you as emergency contact," I said. "With boundaries." "I understand," he replied. "And I respect it." That answer mattered. We sat together for a while, not talking much. The television stayed off. The quiet felt earned. On Wednesday, I met Elaine Porter again, not to file anything new, but to review what we'd already done. "You've covered the essentials," she said, scanning the checklist. "Medical, travel, communication. Is there more?" I asked. "There's always more," she replied. "But you don't need more right now. You need sustainability." She suggested a small addition, a standing note attached to my record stating that any claims about my condition or wishes must be verified with me, directly unless I am unable to respond. Not dramatic. Preventive. I agreed. That evening, a message came from Thomas Reed. Just confirming receipt of updated safeguards. Everything is aligned. Alignment felt like the right word. Over the next days, I noticed how the world adjusted to the new structure. People asked before assuming. Plans were shared instead of declared. Silence stopped being used as a tool. I received fewer messages overall, and the ones I received were clearer. One afternoon, Ruth stopped by with a loaf of bread she'd baked herself. "I wanted to see you," she said. Not to ask questions. We sat at the table and ate slices warm from the oven. "I didn't realize how often decisions were being made around you," she said quietly. "Neither did I replied. "Until they weren't." She nodded. "This feels steadier." "It is," I said. When she left, I washed the dishes slowly, enjoying the warmth of the water, the small, ordinary piece of it. That night, before bed, I opened my notebook again. I wrote carefully, not as a record, but as a reminder. Independence isn't separation. It's self-permission. I closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf. I slept well, not because everything was resolved, but because nothing was being carried that didn't belong to me anymore. Accountability doesn't always ask for apologies. Sometimes it arrives as acceptance. The kind that doesn't argue. The kind that adjusts behavior without demanding recognition. I noticed it first in small places. A message that asked instead of assumed. A plan that waited for my reply before moving forward. A pause where there used to be certainty without permission. Those pauses mattered. They told me the structure was working. On Thursday morning, I received a final email from Elaine Porter. All safeguards are active. Records are complete. Nothing further required unless you request it. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. Completion doesn't need ceremony. Later that day, Michael came over with a folder in his hand. He placed it gently on the table between us. I brought copies, he said. Just so you have them. What are they? I asked. Everything, he replied. Hotel documentation, boundaries, notices, medical confirmations. I opened the folder slowly. Neat. Ordered. Clear. You don't need to keep these, he added. I can hold them. No, I said calmly. I will. He nodded, understanding. That was another change. Respect without negotiation. We sat together for a while. The afternoon light moved across the room, touching the edges of furniture, warming the floor. I didn't realize how much responsibility I was taking that wasn't mine, Michael said quietly. I looked at him. Responsibility feels honorable until it becomes control. He nodded slowly. I thought I was protecting everyone. You were protecting peace, I replied. But peace built on silence doesn't last. He exhaled. I've changed how I listen, he said. Not just to you, to myself. That's the real work, I said. That evening, a message came from Lena. Not long, not defensive. Just this. I acknowledged the boundaries. I won't cross them. I read it once. Then I set my phone down. Acknowledgement is not reconciliation, and that was all right. The days that followed felt lighter. Not because nothing happened, but because nothing was hidden. One afternoon, I took a long walk through the park. Children played near the swings. Couples sat on benches. Life moved forward without asking my permission. I smiled at that. Life doesn't wait. It walks beside you when you let it. I sat on a bench and watched leaves fall slowly from the trees. Each one let go without drama, without announcement. I thought about age, how people assume it means weakness, when in truth it often means discernment. You stop reacting. You start choosing. That evening, I cooked a meal I hadn't made in years. The smell filled my kitchen, bringing back memories of holidays long past. I moved slowly, deliberately, enjoying each step. As I ate, I realized something important. I had not tried to prove anything. I had not tried to correct anyone's character. I had not chased apologies. And yet the situation had corrected itself. That is the quiet power of boundaries. Before bed, I opened my notebook again. This time, I turned back to the very first page. I read my earliest note, written in a bathroom, behind a locked door, when fear had been close and clarity far away. Then I turned to the last page. I wrote one final line for this part of my life. Accountability doesn't shout. It rearranges the room. I closed the notebook gently. Wisdom doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives the way morning light does, quietly, gradually, touching the edges first before filling the room. In the weeks after everything settled into place, my days returned to their old rhythm. Not the old silence, the old steadiness. I woke early, brewed coffee, opened the curtains, and let the world arrive at its own pace. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. That change alone felt like freedom. I began each day with a walk. Nothing long, just enough to feel my feet on the ground and my breath moving in time with my steps. The same streets, the same trees. Familiar things have a way of reminding you who you were before you were interrupted. One morning, as I passed the small park near my house, I sat on a bench and watched people pass by. Some walked quickly, heads down. Others moved slowly, like they had nowhere else to be. I noticed how age teaches patience, not because time is running out, but because you finally understand what deserves it. I thought about Michael, how raising him had taught me the first kind of wisdom, protection. How letting him grow had taught me the second, restraint. And how this chapter had taught me the third, presence. Presence doesn't argue. Presence doesn't compete. Presence simply refuses to be erased. That lesson didn't come from books. It came from listening to my own body when it tightened. From noticing when my voice went quiet, not because I chose silence, but because someone else had chosen it for me. There is a difference. I returned home and made lunch. Soup, slow and warm. I ate it at the table, not distracted by anything else. I noticed how much better food tastes when you're not swallowing unspoken thoughts alongside it. That afternoon, Michael called. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. "You can," I replied. "I'm learning how to pause," he said. "Before I agree. Before I explain. Before I defend. That's a good skill," I said. "It's uncomfortable," he admitted. "Yes," I replied. "Growth often is." He was quiet for a moment. "I think I spent years thinking calm meant everything was okay," he said. "Now I know calm can hide things too." I smiled softly. "Calm without consent is just quiet pressure." He laughed lightly. "You always say things that land later." "That's all right," I replied. "They're not meant to rush." After the call, I sat with that thought for a long time. Not every truth needs immediate agreement. Some truths wait for readiness. That's elder wisdom. Not insisting. Not retreating. Just standing where you are. In the evenings, I began writing again. Not notes, not records. Reflections. Short ones. A line here. A thought there. I didn't try to organize them. I let them come when they wanted to. One night I wrote, "When you stop trying to be understood, you start being clear." Another night. "Boundaries taught gently last longer than anger shouted loudly." These were not lessons meant to teach others. They were reminders meant to anchor me. A few days later, Ruth came by again. This time, she didn't bring bread. She brought herself. "I wanted to sit with you," she said. We sat in the living room, the afternoon sun soft around us. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how we treat older voices. How quickly we move past them." I nodded. "We think listening means agreeing," she continued. "So when we don't want to agree, we stop listening." "That's common," I replied. "Listening without ownership is a learned skill." She smiled faintly. "You handled everything with so much calm." I looked at her. "Calm isn't the absence of feeling," I said. "It's the decision not to hand your feelings to someone else to manage." She sat with that for a moment. When she left, I realized something else had shifted. People were no longer coming to me for explanations. They were coming for perspective. That's another sign of elder wisdom. When your presence becomes a reference point instead of a question mark. One evening, alone with the quiet, I thought back to that locked space. Not with fear, not with anger, but with gratitude for what it revealed. Sometimes confinement teaches you the value of room. Sometimes silence teaches you the power of voice. Sometimes being unseen teaches you how to stand. I did not wish that moment away. I honored what it showed me. Before bed, I stood by the window again, watching the neighborhood lights come on one by one. Each light did its job without asking if it was bright enough. That's how I wanted to live now. Visible. Steady, unapologetic in my presence. I opened my notebook one last time that night and wrote a line. I knew I would carry forward. Wisdom is not what you say after pain. It's how you live once pain no longer speaks for you. I closed the notebook gently. There was still one section left. One final gathering of thoughts. Not to conclude everything, but to pass something forward. There comes a time in life when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" And you begin asking, "What is this asking of me now?" That shift is not loud. It does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, the way breath settles after a long walk. In the days that followed, I noticed how my body responded to ordinary moments. I stood up from a chair without bracing myself. I answered the phone without tightening my shoulders. I laughed without checking if it was appropriate. Those small freedoms told me something important. I was no longer living on alert. Age teaches you that peace is not found by winning arguments. It's found by choosing which arguments no longer deserve your energy. I thought of the many years I had spent explaining myself gently, hoping gentleness would be understood. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. But what I learned late, and wish I had learned sooner, is this. Gentleness without boundaries invites confusion. Gentleness with boundaries invites respect. That is not hardness. That is wisdom. One afternoon, Michael stopped by with groceries. He placed them on the counter and began putting things away without asking. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. You don't have to, I said. I want to, he replied. And I'll ask next time. I smiled. That sentence held more maturity than any apology ever could. As we sat down for tea, he said, I've been thinking about what you showed me. I waited. Not what you said, he corrected himself. What you did. I nodded. You didn't push, he continued. You didn't disappear. You stayed present. That's the balance, I said. Staying without shrinking. He looked at me for a long moment. I want to live like that, he said. You will, I replied. Because you've seen it. Seeing changes people more than lectures ever could. Later, alone again, I opened my notebook. Not to write, but to reread. I noticed how the early pages were tight, precise, focused on facts. The later pages were softer, slower, reflective. That told the whole journey without needing a summary. When life corners you, you learn structure. When life releases you, you learn meaning. I thought about the women who might hear these words someday. Women who have lived long lives, who have held families together quietly, who have swallowed discomfort to keep peace. If I could sit beside them on a bench, I would not tell them to fight. I would tell them this. You do not need to be loud to be real. You do not need permission to be present. You do not need approval to protect your dignity. Protection does not make you difficult. Clarity does not make you cold. And choosing yourself does not mean abandoning others. It means you finally arrive where you are. That evening, I cooked a familiar meal and ate it slowly. I washed the dishes, dried my hands, and turned off the kitchen light. I moved through my home with ease, noticing how every room felt welcoming again. Before bed, I stood by the window one last time and watched the street settle into night. Porch lights glowed. The world softened. I thought back to that locked space, not with pain, not with anger, but with the understanding that it had shown me something I needed to see before the rest of my life unfolded. Sometimes, the moment that tries to erase you is the moment that teaches you how to stand. I closed the curtains and turned off the light. Not because the day was over, but because I was at peace ending it.